Hi, what I would like to do is introduce you to the stalwart of rucksacks, the British issue Bergen. A robust creature, endurable and suitable and up for anything, which is just the way I like them. It's a really robust, constructed, well thought out and simple. Everything that you want from a rucksack, well, at least I think so. I do like the back pocket, and that is a cracker. Simple, well shielded, everything in it just where you want it. Right on the back so you can turn it over and immediately you're at whatever you want. The side pockets, well, of course you can use, they unzip. Wonderful quality, look at that. Look at the robustness of those zips. YKK at their best. And for additional, it's clipped in as well. So it's all holding together. And of course, it can be separated. We'll show that separated in a moment. And the rucksack, or singular, can be used with the yoke. So the yoke is bought separate. If you're going to buy the rucksack, you buy the yoke, which is separate, and then you will need the ancillary straps. There's two of them, and that will convert the side pockets into a rucksack, and makes a perfect all-day sack then. Here we are, with a look-down view of all this robust stitching. Look at that, 3 rows. No, 4 rows. Same stitching pattern as used on cargo webbing on trucks. It's robust. And again, you've got more loops here, which can be tethered over, and you can then use it to put even more gear on. I carry on the base of the sack a kit mat, and I use the kit mat whether I'm out bivvying or just out for the day. It's a very small weight penalty, and you've got something comfy, and if you fancy a kit during the day and a sit down and you don't want to get your backside wet and you want to keep your backside warm, well then can't do better, and it all blends in beautifully. I hold it on with a bungee, and I prefer it to a strap. It's a lot simpler. This is quite a long bungee, and just be careful with these, bloody lethal if you get that in your eye. While we're looking at this side, I just want to point out some of the factors on it which I think set it out from all the others which are available. I like the ladder webbing which is along the side. Its robustness, and it's got a purpose as well. I don't know what the purpose is, but I'm sure there's someone out there who will be able to inform us, and be grateful of that. Give you a quick twirl. There we are. And we're back. Now let's have a look at the lid. And if there is your favourite place in a rucksack, mine's at the lid. Voluminous top pocket, and that is a large top pocket. Ample. Notice the securing webbing. Loops, you've got one here, one there. You can tether something to your lid. So it's really designed for a lot of external. Although you can put a lot inside, you can also add a great deal to the outside. Then as we open the lid and get inside, we've got the internal pocket. That leads us into, again, it's a large compartment inside, and the top being separate. These are separate pockets, so they're not connected. So you've also got more volume, which you can use here. So you've got it's well weathered. So you've got the shielding on the top, and this is inside, and this is very unlikely to suffer from becoming wet. There we are. Just have a look at those. If I can hold them a bit more close up. Look at that stitching on there. And that's the difference between a military rucksack and a pale imitation. It is this detail and quality. There was no skimping on how these were made. They're not critical, but I think they're good. You've got a snow flap round here, what they call it, a snow flap on the cells gimps on rucksacks, and you have two tetherings. So you have the snow flap, lighter material, so you can create the weatherproofing so that ingress of water into the main compartment, and then you have a running cord around the top. Very simple, lovely little metal ferrules there, lovely put together in a really strong piece of nylon cord, not the polyester, this is nylon. Clever little lock here. This is a beautiful little lock. This fixed lock, a 194 patent. Isn't that clever? There we are. We still make some good stuff in England, or it might be in Scotland, who knows, or Wales. That is a well thought out form following function. Isn't that a good little running lock? Tie lock. No, it's called fixed lock. There we are. Again, in your ferrules, sliding, then that all fits in nice and neatly. Of course, the main compartment even has its own waterproof liner. And here is one such device. So this will more than fit inside. It is a military one. Yes, here we are. Liner filled. Waterproof large. You probably need the medium, but this is all they had when I bought it. Otherwise, use some poly bags, building rubble bags, transparent so you can see what's inside, and then that'll keep the main compartment dry, because once it starts getting wet, it's difficult. You need then a dry day to dry it out, and once it starts raining, it never seems to stop. All these dry liner bags, if you can pick one up at your surplus shop or online, worth a bit of an investment. The other thing it enables you to do is it gives you additional storage. If you're out and you partially unpack the rucksack, you've also got, you have a bag, separate bag, you can pack it in so that you don't have to keep returning it inside the bag. So a spare bag is always a useful thing to carry with you. Let's clip that back together. We'll turn it over and we'll have a look at the backing system on this, because I'm quite excited about one. If you can be excited about a backing system, but I am. Here we are at the back of the rucksack. Well, depending which way you look at it. The lifting loops, well thought out. Top loop, really strong. Reinforcement onto the metal frame which is on the inside. Your lifting loop and your carrying loop at the top. So you're not lifting with one arm, you can spread the weight over lifting with two arms. It's clever, it's a good idea. you've also got the option, I suppose, if you attach it with cords, that you can then spread the weight, or whatever, if you need to relay it. If you're going up a rock face, you can actually haul the sack up. Should you, well, you wouldn't want to be climbing with a rucksack. On the back itself, you've got modest padding on the hip belts. Heavily, again, multiple stitching down here on that gusset. Replaceable hesp and casp, so if that breaks, or if that one breaks, you're able to replace it. You can also centralise, depending on what your waists are. If you're triple XL or just a modest large, you can centralise so that the buckle is central. It's a nice little gesture. It also enables you to replace the buckle if it breaks. And if they do break, you then have the burden of your Bergen totally on your shoulders. The whole design of this, it was a clever idea, and it really came into fruition sort of in the 70s and 80s. They started having ideas about that a rucksack could be more efficient, and thought was put into the ergonomics of it. Before, it was the open frame, and that goes back virtually to the pre-Bronze Age. It's a simple wooden structure. It fits on your shoulder with two shoulder straps. The problem with that is, if you want to carry the load any distance, it's painful and uncomfortable. The clever idea with the webbing and the hip brace is that it fits on top of your hip bone. Being on top of your hip bone, you're then able to support the load on your hips, and it's prevented and to some extent held up by your shoulders and by the design, so you're also leaning forward slightly, as you would have to, otherwise you'd fall backwards. So it's a clever idea, and it works. The padding is very modest on this, so that you've got the load as close to your back as possible, so it's not creating leverage. It really is a clever idea, and with heavy loads it's very important to have something that fits. And these come in, I think it's 3 sizes, so if you're buying one, try and get one which fits you. This, I was fortunate enough, it's a long back, so it fits me, and it's designed for my size and height. It's a packing bag, it really is. But it's important that it fits. I would always suggest that you carry a spare clasp with you. It takes up no space. They cost about £4, £5, and you've got something. If these break, if one of the prongs could take, look at that, you'd hardly think that was able, but it's been tested, and it will, with hold and support and the engineering, but of course that can all go wrong. And if this breaks and you can't use it, it stuffs you, it really does. You do need, I think, to carry a spare clasp. It's worth buying one, it's worth having one. And while I'm on carrying a spare, it's rather the same with a sleeping bag. Why they sell sleeping bags which are 4-season, they don't give you a spare zipper, I don't know. I always have a spare zipper for my sleeping bag, because a sleeping bag, it doesn't matter how many seasons it is, if that zip isn't working, you're going to be cold. And when you get cold, you can't sleep. And if you can't sleep, your body can't recover. So it just accumulates. And so always think it through, take what you need, and then think through if something should go wrong. It's the obvious, a bit like going out on your bicycle. Carry a puncture kit, but carry a spare tube. wonderful lifting loop. The adjustment, that's more to actually adjust the curvature of the strap itself. So it's a wonderful idea. So everyone, without perhaps not everyone, lots of people will actually just pull it as tight as possible. But it alters the height. You get height adjustment. It also alters the curvature as well. So it's changing two dynamics of the strap, and it's worth fitting the sack before you start out. It's never comfortable carrying heavy loads, but it can be more uncomfortable if it doesn't fit. So I would just suggest that, and it's worth playing around once you've loaded it and once you've got the gravity right. Try and keep the heavy items against your back, not outside of the sack, on the outside of it, and try keep it balanced in weight so it doesn't have a tendency to draw itself to one side. That then becomes difficult. It offsets you. It's surprising how sensitive your body is. Certainly with the side pocket, if one is heavier than the other, it will unbalance you slightly, and that is a drag, it really is. So also balancing as you would finding the centre of the gravity. But a wonderful little back system, very unpadded, allowing all of the load to be as close to your back as possible. Clever feature, and it was never arrived at in one step. It's evolution of ideas. Well, I've taken off one of the side pockets to chat about it, but while the side was off, I just again would introduce you to the compression straps which are at the side, and this makes it practical as a single compartment rucksack. So the side pockets are off. You're able then to compress or to let the bag expand depending on the amount of loading that you have inside, again with the idea of bringing all the load as close as possible to your back, keeping it as close to your back as possible so that again it's more ergonomic. You can stand up straighter, you're not being pulled back, you don't have to lean forward to compensate for that offset of balance. It's quite a narrow sack, so that has its usefulness, particularly if you're into bushcraft and you're going through woodland, because a wide sack does tend, well, it will snag on all the outgrowth of the trees and bushes. So it's a narrow sack, and if your body can get through, well, then the rucksack's going to follow. But we've got 3 of them along the side. Nice little touch. I think it's a good idea having those. Well, of course, you wouldn't design a rucksack without the compression straps. And you've got 3 robust ones here, which will press everything, sandwich it all in, so that you've got a nice, efficient pack on your back. Let's just move to the side pocket, and the side pocket can be fitted to the webbing yoke, but you will need 2 ancillary straps. If you look, when you see the photographs of them, you'll be able to put it together, but the ancillary straps are totally important, and mine's being awaited, but I wanted a green one, not a camo one, but there we are. It's still being in the post, but I thought I'd get this together. Here's a lovely feature where that was at the bottom, because if you zip the 2 side pockets together, which of course you're able to, but I'm not sure if they fit on the yoke, so we've yet to see, you've then got a tethering loop at the bottom so that you can put something wide on there should you need to. and it will carry it across. But even if you don't, you can put something on. Useful little tool. And again, here we have a couple of little tabs on there, just in case you need to carry something, attach something. Very useful. You've just got them there. You can just clip it on with a bungee or just put a cord through it and tie it. I think we don't really, of course there's a whole heap of knots which were designed for tying ropes, wagoners knots, and really they're worth learning as well, or just sort of skipping over, so you've got some idea of the knots which you can use and which will actually are slip knots. It's very clever. I had a chum that knew all those types of knots and was able to load wagons and carts in the traditional way, able to tie it down and then to pull the ropes and then hitch them in place. Wonderful. I never realised there were so many wagoners knots. And here we are with the 4 tethering points, which reinforces the zipping at the side. Nice little feature. I just ran over as I was unpacking thinking, yeah, this is the bungee cord that I quite like. These are about 6 foot in length, so they're a long bungee, and it's always handy to have one, or preferably 2 of them. That has the plastic and it hooks over to itself, so it gives you some options, but a 6 foot bungee cord would be useful. I couldn't really end this in-depth analysis of the UK Bergen without giving a quick oversight of the Jaguar, the Carrie Jaguar rucksack. This has been superseded, but I always thought the Jaguar was quite years ahead. It was introduced in about the 80s. That's when I first came across it, but it was so phenomenally expensive. It was it was about 120, 130 pounds, which was back in the 80s. It was so expensive. It builds on and is part of the same as the British Bergen. You have the detachable side pockets. They use a simple plastic slider, and really I don't think you can, the side pockets were additional carriage space, storage space for the rucksack. They weren't designed as independent day sacks. Those would be carried across your chest, so you would have access to a small day sack with perhaps snacks in it and the other essentials, and the rucksack itself would carry additional loading in the side pockets. Again, this can be detached, but it's a hell of a fluff doing it, and you've got plastic clips, and although in the living room it's easy to disassemble them, when you're out and your fingers are cold and the plastic is more rigid, I question whether you could take the side pockets off and whether you'd be in the mood to do so. This one carries the, there we are, the SA system backing, which is an aluminium rail where the shoulder straps and backing slide up and down. First thing you notice, there's a lot more padding in this, and the shoulder straps are more padded, and it fits externally, the aluminium frame is external, into these plastic sockets. It's not designed for huge loads, I don't think, although it's quite voluminous. It's, I think, really how you describe it, as an alpine pack, so for quick movement, sort of in like a pair of you, 2 or 3, but if you're climbing, scrambling, doing ridge walking, it's a handy thing. It's designed so that you'd be self-sufficient, but I don't know how long for, you know, a long weekend. It's a lighter construction, all the material is lighter, but it's still a good rucksack, and it's as durable as most people would want. And many of the features that you find on the British Bergen are duplicated in this. But I don't know, it's chicken and egg. Which one came first? But I thought I'd introduce you to it, and I'll be doing a more depth look at this because I think it's a good rucksack. It's certainly a light rucksack. The UK Bergen is about 4.5 kilos, I think, so it's a heavy item before you ever put anything in it. This is a lighter fabric and perfectly durable. It's a good sack, but more about that at some other time. Last but no means least is the Aluminium Reinforcing Bar that the rucksack takes its shape from. Quite simple stuff, about 1/2 inch. Thickness is not 1/8, if we said 1/8. Held in place with Velcro and 2 studs. There are 2 channels in which the rucksack reinforcement, the backing runs. Neatly finished with some caps on and riveted so that it is flexible. Well, it has movement at the top, and that is a nice, well thought out reinforcement. The rods apparently can be shaped to your back. I just leave them straight, unless you're Quasimodo, in which case you'd probably need to adapt it slightly. But it's the feature which holds the sack. The internal frame goes away from the external frame, obviously, but it was a clever idea to actually have to improve the weight distribution and the ergonomics. It really was looked into, and instead of just being a cursory item with loading that you put on your back, a lot of thought was put into it. It honed down the important features that you need. Some comfort, the weight being closer to your back and not separated from your back with an external frame, that you're able to narrow the rucksack because the frame didn't exceed the loading. You could also then do things with it other than have it as a set frame. Of course, the other thing for transport as well, everything tied in that it was a far better idea to have an efficient rucksack where you could walk further, you could be less fatigued at the end of it. Well, less fatigued, less in pain at the end of it. It was a very clever concept, and it's rather like walking boots and running shoes. You can be frivolous about it, but a lot of thought went into it, as with the rucksack. So there we are, I present it. They're freely available at the surplus shops, and if you were looking for something for long weekends, you know, doing long trail walks, being self-sufficient, where you need to carry extra loading, I would say, yeah, it's a nice rucksack. Even if you never really used it and only utilised it a few times, it's always nice to perhaps experience something which is designed for a purpose, and this is certainly designed for heavy loading. If only we had more open space in the UK to actually exploit it. But it's certainly fun, and it's certainly a wonderful rucksack. Hope you've enjoyed my little commentary over it. It's rather in depth, and I hope it's approached the rucksack in a different way than other videos, because I think there are many features on this which are interesting to explore and to find out their purpose and reasoning behind why they were introduced. But as an uncompromising constructed rucksack, these are an incredible piece of kit. There's so much. I don't know what the price would be if you bought these commercially, because there is just so much to it, and there is so much detail to it, and the detail of the quality of the components, it's all top. You know, they're not an expensive item when you buy them. They're what, about 30. I paid about 30 for it, and I just think, goodness me, that was, you know, it has paid 1,000% dividends. It's really a good piece of kit. Hope you've enjoyed looking at it, and I'll dig out some more clutter to have a long chat about. Thanks for watching. Stay lucky. Bye.